Bada bing, let's go.
Sorry if I'm looking a little red today, guys. I feel like I look red. Do I look red in the face?
Yeah, you're like a fucking lobster over there. It's not that bad.
Well, hopefully you're listening to this on
need a haircut,
audio
though.
only. I'm just kidding. You better be watching our YouTube videos.
They desperately.
I'm sorry.
need
You
it.
just called me out and tell me I need a haircut?
It's just getting a little poofy.
You're not wrong. You gonna pay for it?
No, you got it. You going to see your girl?
I'm sorry. What?
You got a favorite hairdresser?
I do have somebody that cuts my hair because they do it right. That's how it's done. And guess what? Now you go to the same place I go.
No, I don't. I
If
did
you-
a couple times.
If you could, you would.
It's so far. Honestly, Great Clips does a great job, and it's cheaper.
My hair's a little more
What? What's is there anything special about your hair?
High-
You have white person hair like the rest
high
of us.
maintenance than yours.
No, it's not.
Dude, my hair is so much thicker than yours.
No, it's not. Why
It
are you
might
doing
be,
that
though.
noise, man?
It might be, though.
I don't know. I remember the Jufro from high school, dude. It was long and it was thick.
Yeah, but it wasn't quite as poof. Mine's a marshmallow.
I don't know. Everybody who runs their hands through my hair always says, "Gosh, that's so thick." I'm like,
And then they find
you should
mine.
feel it downstairs. Oh, I'm sorry.
My joke is irrelevant now.
Oh God. I just need to. Do we need to restart?
Nope.
Oh God.
Oh, so anyways.
Yep.
This week's episode, we're talking about Back to the Future Part 3.
Woo.
So, just so you know, before we get into anything else, that will be
case
the
you-
main topic.
You
and
just click on shit on your phone without looking at titles.
yeah, just in case, just so you know, just in case you aren't the kind of person that scrolls back to see the previous videos or previous audios.
Yeah, go back and listen to those. Although
Part-
it doesn't really matter because they're all the same movie.
Part 1, 2, and 3. We did 1 and 2. Now we're doing 3. That's how numbers work.
Wow.
Before we
did-
jump into movies,
great. Yes, go on.
I want to talk to you
Uh-oh.
about something that happened to me.
Don't tell me about a fucking dream.
So a couple nights ago,
No.
playing games with my family.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
And
What kind of games?
so one of my cousins came in town.
Mm.
And so when I join my family for games, I walk in the room
As you do.
and I see a game called Never Have I Ever.
Pretty okay. Like
But
pretty standard. If you
it's
bought
like a-
cards for that.
yeah, it's like a card game. Like Never Have I Ever.
So it's just like pre-generated things you've never done.
Yes. And the second I saw that, I was
Takes
like,
the fun out of it, but
well, let's put it this way. They
part
try
of
to
it's like personalizing, it, right?
yeah, they try to pin you. So that's okay. So think about it this way: what
Mhm.
kind of cards what kind of game do you think this is going to be? If it's very personalizing, Never Have I Ever. I
It's usually
even when you,
supposed to embarrass you.
bingo, I was going to say bungo.
Bungo.
Bungo,
Right on
boy.
the dot. Bungo, baby.
Bingo, bango, bungo. So, what kind of things do you think they're going to pre-generate on these cards? My initial thought
sex
is,
stuff.
yep,
Yeah.
this is not a game I should be
It's
playing. with my
always never
family.
have either. Is always sex stuff. Yeah.
Yep. So I was like, this is probably something I don't want to be playing with my family. And not that I'm like guilty of anything like that, but it's,
Guilty of anything like what?
well, like you said, it's like sex stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like any of that. Like, that's not really a game that you're going to pin me with a lot of stuff. If you know me, that's not a game you're going to pin me with a lot of
Right.
a lot of that stuff.
Right.
So, but my point is just like like the craziness of some of these cards, and then maybe finding other things. Anyways, so
So you and your aunts and uncles are like, never have I ever tongued her fart box.
okay, my point is going into this, I was like,
Sorry,
oh
I'm in rare
no,
form today.
here we go. But here's the big old twist
You
here.
got,
Okay,
like, the Amish version.
I got flack from my family
Mm-hmm.
because apparently there were things that I admitted to, and they're like, what? Oh, and I'm like, I'm a natural human being. One of those was talking about something of like.
So wait,
I
they
think-
hold on.
What's
Because I'm lost here. They caught you in a never have I ever to things, and they weren't expecting to.
Yeah, I guess
okay,
so.
Gotcha.
That's
and they
a
were
better way to
surprised
phrase
by
it.
that. Okay. Gotcha.
So, but it started with this conversation of like something about like farting in public or something. I don't think that was quite the card.
pretty tame. Yeah.
So that wasn't the thing that I was like caught at, but it was something along those lines. And then I started talking about like you ever like
So wait, you've never farted in
have to-
public?
I'm not saying I haven't, but what I said was, have you ever had like to itch your butt so
Mhm.
bad, like your butt itches, but you're in public,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it itches so bad that it almost not hurts, but like you have to scratch it.
Are we talking butt or asshole?
Well, sometimes it gets a little bit in the crack a little bit. Like
Okay,
sometimes
so
like
you're
okay,
you're not-
sometimes like inside the butt cheek,
Yeah.
wherever, doesn't
Mhm.
matter as long as it's on your butt,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Sure.
Tell me that like it gets so itchy, like yo, I gotta find a place to sneak
Yeah.
away.
You
or
didn't even
something.
say that you did itchy. You just said that you got itchy. I mean, that's totally out of your control.
Thank you.
Okay,
So I was like, it got itchy, but I think it kind of got to the point where I've said I have scratched it, but you like try to hide it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure.
It's not like I'm just out there like in front of everybody, like everybody look at me,
just
and
like-
just
you're
shove my hand up there.
You're just wiping with a telephone pole or some shit.
Oh yeah, good day we're having as I'm just up and down on the telephone pole. And they're like, well, you're doing that in public. I'm like, sometimes you don't have an option. And
Just
they
tell
thought I
people
was so
you're scratching your
crazy. And I'm like, your butt has never itched. First of all, you've never had an itch on your butt. And they're like, of course I have. But I'm like, never in public? They're like, yeah, but you find it like you go somewhere. I'm like, sometimes you don't have the option. And I'm not even saying that that's like that happens to me all the time, but I'm like, maybe I'm just really unlucky that sometimes that happens. But how am I gonna get flack for my butt itching? I can't. And I was like, I told him that. I was like, I can't control when and where my butt itches.
Yeah, I think you're playing with a bunch of liars.
I'm telling you, man. That's why I was like,
'Cause
look, I said I'm the only one being truthful here.
They've all been alive much longer than you. I mean, the odds of you having that problem and not them, no way. Nope.
That's what
Calling
I'm
it out.
saying.
Calling it
And
out.
they've said they've had it, but they've like gone somewhere else. But sometimes it's like so bad you gotta like face a corner and like
Mhm.
pretend you're fixing your belt or something
Mm.
because you're like, I gotta take care
I
of
think you
this.
should just own it, honestly.
Right? No, I did.
I wish we lived in a kind
I
of
did.
society where you could just say, "Hey guys, I'm gonna go over here."
Oh,
a
like in
couple
front of
steps away."
everybody.
Yeah, just like, "Hey, everybody, just gonna walk a couple steps over there. I'm gonna blatantly scratch my ass, and honestly, I'm gonna enjoy it." So, I just want everyone to be okay with that. I'm not a liar. I'm just gonna tell you. So, I think that's I wish we were there. You know,
We're not. Sadly, not
Sad.
yet.
Yeah.
Not as a culture.
we're just a bunch of liars.
But I was like,
Everything
I'm the
about-
only one being truthful here, and I guess which isn't necessarily the case, but I just don't understand how I'm the only one that's been in that situation. I wanted to bring that to light,
Mm.
so I'm not looked at as somebody with bodily
So
function
you
deformities.
set that up. I thought that was gonna take a much darker turn into the sexual deviancy.
Well, let's put it this way: that game did have a lot of cards that were like, "Whoa," and
What
just
was-
discarded.
Okay, so whoever drew it just wouldn't read it, and they just get a new one.
Yeah, because you had like a hand
that's
of you had
that's
a hand of cards.
Okay, so you got to pick from like your hand or
It
whatever.
depends. Like every round, there's a different like rule. It's like, oh, everybody give a card that you're guilty of to somebody, and they have to pick the worst one, and whoever is guilty of it, whoever's card it is, gets the point. It's like whoever
Mm.
makes the worst life decisions wins.
That's kind of interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so wait, whoever's made the worst life decisions?
Yeah,
wins the
because it's like
game?
never
Oh, that's hilarious.
because like never have I ever, and some were like
Oh,
bad stuff. So they're considered the
that's
worst
true.
life decisions, and that's what it says in the rules.
No, because usually in Never Have I Ever, when you've done stuff is when you lose.
Right, but this game was like opposite. Like if
Oh,
you've
weird.
done it, you get it. So like you're trying to get something that basically you've done, and everyone else hasn't done.
Mm.
Anyways, my whole point is, I'm not a freak. Sometimes my booty itch.
My
I'm not a
family
freak.
thinks I'm a freak. I'm okay. I'm normal.
Man, next time I see somebody scratching their butt, I'll be like, "Ha! That man scratching his butt in public."
And I support you.
But
I
I
am
love
there
you
for
for
you.
it. Look at this, and I'll start scratching mine too. Be like, "We're
Yeah.
in this together."
Just eye contact.
It's like when dogs take a poop and they look at you like intently. Like apparently there's some dogs that'll look at you and because they need to establish some eye contact. I guess
think they
like,
just
is
need
this
to
okay?
know, like, that's like an evolutionary thing, right?
Feel
like
safe?
they're looking at you, they're like,
You
Are you
got
gonna
me?
come at me? Do I need to run? Do I need to stop what I'm doing right now and go?
It's a buddy look. It's like, you got me?
Yeah.
Because I'm defenseless right now. I need you. If something attacks me, I need you. You got me. You got me, right? And during that whole stare.
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, bro, I got you. I got you. If anything attacks you right now, you just keep on doing your thing, buddy. That's my story for
Wow.
the day.
It's good.
You got anything before we jump into the movies?
Yeah, it's not really about me per se. It's kind of like it may affect me. It's kind of movie news. Is that okay? Can we touch that subject? Well, you're not excited about this.
I am, because I feel like you're interested enough to bring it up.
Yeah. So you're familiar with who Dan Harmon is?
No.
Really? Oh, okay. Well, you know his stuff. Like he's a writer. He created Community,
Okay.
obviously, and then also his bigger thing, I guess, now is Rick and Morty.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he's a bit of a weird guy, but he's honestly, as far as like shows go, and I know it's kind of weird because, man, Rick and Morty's great, but the fan base for it is really ugh.
You don't
you
like
remember-
anything that gets popular?
No.
You just think it's super cringy.
No, you remember a couple years back, the Rick and Morty fan base when the Szechuan sauce thing?
I mean, when they sold that for a limited
No,
time?
no. Like when the fans were running into McDonald's and getting up on counters and shit.
Oh, were
and
they
demanding
really?
it. Yeah. You don't remember any of that?
No.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I'm sure I heard of it. I just
that
forgot.
ever since then, it's become like now I'm kind of like, I don't want to tell people I don't like Rick and Morty because fuck, now I'm gonna be like in that crowd. And plus, there's also been a lot of people on like Reddit, which Reddit's a shithole anyway.
So it's like the Star Wars fan base.
A little bit, yeah. But there was like that really famous post somebody put on there that was like, defending Rick and Morty and saying you have to have the highest IQ to even fathom what's going on. The micro plot lines, blah blah. Like he totally just the cringiest shit.
Right.
And so yeah, like anything that gets popular, the fan base gets awful. But I really think
here's a question for you,
Yeah.
really quickly before
Sure.
you get into this. Is that good? Here's what I mean by that.
fan base is getting cringy.
It's not good when fans do crazy things. Let me say that.
Yeah.
But if something gets so popular, this is very loose. I'm not saying the cringy things are like people are bad. I mean, if your Gemini counter is demanding for things and like there's bad to that.
Yeah.
But my point is there are good people, there are bad people. There are
Mhm.
people that'll make rational decisions. There are
Peaceful.
people that'll make irrational decisions. So,
Yikes.
if you are popular enough that you're appealing to both demands or both those type of people to an
Mhm.
extent where you're reaching those type of people, does that just mean it's
You gotta be
super
pretty
broad?
popular.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
so obviously that doesn't represent the entire community, but if you're reaching people that you're also able to reach the crazy people out there too, does that
I
make
think-
sense?
I
I feel
think
like I'm sounding weird when I
So
say
I
that.
think it's more of like there's a size, there's like a bubble, and when you pop that bubble as far as your audience size goes, when that bubble gets popped, when you hit enough people where a certain percentage of them just statistically have to be these awful people
That's
who
my
are gonna do
point.
crazy
When
shit.
you get big enough, you have a
Right.
likelier chance of crazy things happening
Yeah.
because more people know your stuff.
So honestly, at some point, if this podcast will get so big, we'll have really cringe ass ads. We'll be do crazy stuff.
So what was your point?
Okay, so but Dan Harmon, I think, is a really clever comedy writer. Of obviously Community, even though I only found out about Community when it came on Netflix, so like 3.5 months ago, and I've already I've watched the shit out of it. Like,
What's your
I
favorite
know-
show at
yes.
the moment?
But honestly, like even comparing to, and I've seen a lot of sitcoms, it's at least up there, like top 3 at
Right.
least. If not,
Right,
one of the
it's
better
fresh
ones.
though, so that's why I at least
Yes,
state
yes,
at the
but
moment.
at the
I'm
same
helping-
time-
hey, I'm helping you out from all fans out
In
there
the future.
because if you have a better one or later you think, well, blank or blank is better.
Well, that's fine. My opinions can change. I don't have to like if I say it now. it
That's
doesn't mean
right.
it's set in stone
His opinions
forever.
could change,
Yeah.
guys. Okay.
Yeah. So, but so I think that Dan Harmon, and I think a big part of that is because of him, and he's a really clever writer. Now,
So you're bringing it up because you just want to thank him. Thanks, Dan.
yeah, that's it. Thanks, Dan. Well, no, this is gonna go down a dark turn.
Oh, no.
Dan is a bit of a weird guy, and recently there has been some calls to cancel Rick and Morty, because of something he did back in 2011. Now,
Does it have to do with Rick and Morty?
no,
So why don't they also cancel Community?
well, because it's already been canceled.
What?
Community's not on the air anymore. Stopped
Oh,
back in
you
like
mean
2015 or whatever.
it's airing on stuff. What I mean by cancel is like
Like get rid of it.
culturally cancel it.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but I don't know. But they are talking about Rick and Morty because it's still going, I guess. Like it's
Yeah.
still. That's a good point because if the reason you'd cancel Rick and Morty is so that you get Dan Harmon out of a job, then I mean he's still being paid. I assume every time Community gets sold or moved around. I mean he created it, so I don't. Yeah, that's a good point. They should just honestly the whole cancel a show around one person's involvement is a really stupid idea because how many people are gonna get kicked out on their ass from a job? And you know what I mean? Because you want to do that. I mean, even if I don't know, if the main creator of a guy like killed somebody and went to jail for it, you still shouldn't cancel their show. You should just switch it out for another like writer or main actor or whoever. You know what I mean? Like don't cancel the whole show. That's crazy. But anyway, so
there's got to be something in contracts to where if something like that happens, which I think there is, like
They
you're not
don't
going
have
to
to.
make money off of that at that point, are you?
I don't know how that works because
Just put
you
a
know-
clause in there like to where you're not supporting them. You're supporting the works that they put in the show as long as what they're putting into the show or the movie or whatever it is does not give off the bad vibes and represent something evil or bad. And then if they do something bad, they have nothing to do with it. It's very clear they have nothing to do with them. They get a new writer, and that person doesn't get paid anymore. Move
I don't
on,
think
right?
that's how that works, though. I don't think that if you get, and what we're even talking about isn't even a crime what he did, or anything.
Yeah, I don't even know. You haven't really.
But even if you did get like convicted for murder, and you say you wrote a book and that book continued to sell, maybe because you got convicted for murder, I don't think you'd stop getting money for it.
Should you stop getting money for it?
I don't know. That's a bit of a weird gray area there because like. What if?
So
later
are
down
you
the-
just bringing
okay.
this up so we can
No.
talk about cancel culture again? You want to like get into this space where people are going to be against us about something or for us or
No,
politics?
I'm curious on what you're gonna think about this because
I
what
don't
he
want
did
to.
doesn't. It's very interesting because right, like normally when this stuff happens, it's like a Me Too thing, like where he actually like went out and like
Right? Did yes?
maybe or maybe not had sexually assaulted someone or something like that. Here's the thing: what he did doesn't actually have any direct impact on anything else, but is still pretty like yikes. He didn't even say anything. So he shot a short for Comedy Central back in 2009. And the Comedy Central was a parody of that show Dexter. You remember?
Yep.
Yeah. Except it was a bit of a turn. So it was just like a quick 1 minute 30 type thing. And it was basically he's like there. It's like called Daryl. He's there as for like seeing like a psychiatrist type thing. And instead of killing people, the character may or may not rape babies. I know it's real rough. I know, big shock. And there is a scene where there's a baby doll. It's very clear that it's a doll. It's not at all human, and he does kind of do stuff to it. It's obviously they don't show.
So
they
how
show
is
from
that not bad?
behind.
I'm confused.
No, it's very bad. That's what I'm saying. But at the same time, didn't actually do it, and it is for a joke. So it's in this weird thing where it's like, yikes, that's a yikes joke, right?
Right. So I still don't understand.
Well, I'm trying to figure out so should you cancel somebody for that?
Are you asking if they should like be arrested? What do you, I don't.
Well, definitely not arrested because he didn't break a law. If you want to make that I don't know how you do that. I mean, make that a law. Okay, so he made a very crazy bad joke, right?
Yeah.
But it really doesn't actually hurt anybody.
I disagree.
Okay, it's okay. I mean, I'm still trying to figure this out, so I don't know how
because
exactly I feel
things things that you put out affect people, regardless whether it's if it's a movie that's not real, whether you do it or not.
Though, because
Movies
people
affect me.
people-
Movies that people are acting
Mhm.
affect me. Movies are supposed to bring a message for the most part. Not all of them,
Don't agree with
but
that.
a lot of movies do bring a message. And so I'm not saying this was a message of you should do this in this situation, but that's my point is movies can bring a message. They can make you feel things. I feel things when I watch movies.
So you think
they
he was
affect me. So even if you're doing something, I think there's a line when it comes to bad taste. Like there's things you can make jokes about, and I think there's just things you shouldn't make jokes about. Like I think there is a line.
That's interesting because I think we kind of had talked about like comedy is supposed to be
Like as
pretty
long as it's
much
funny, it doesn't matter?
open-ended. Well, I mean, I say that as far as I mean, yes, I think that rule kind of does apply, but at the same time, you good? You don't really know what's funny until you try it. So again, I don't think I would have ever made this joke. It's pretty raw.
I would hope not.
But at the same time, he definitely wasn't like pushing any particular message. Plus, I don't even know because I don't know if art is responsible for the message, because message is up to interpretation, right? I could watch that clip and go, wow, that was clearly a joke, but hot damn, that's a bad joke. Someone else could laugh from that. Someone else could think he was normalizing pedophilia. So there's, I mean, who's to say what the message was or what the intent was, right? I mean, it's completely up for interpretation.
This is the other issue that you have, though, when you're talking about movies, because we talked about this before we started the movie podcast.
Plus,
you said that you can understand if people just look at it from art, but you said you have this belief that there are some objective things you can rate movies on.
Oh, yeah, I can objectively
So
tell
what if
you,
there's-
bad joke, guy.
So, well, then there's not really a
I say
huge difference
bad,
here.
I think, but I'm saying bad as in poor in quality, not bad as in bad for society. You know what I mean? Like, should art be should there be limits on it? Because that's kind of what you're saying, is that it should be limited. I mean, I think it should be limited as far as, like, you can't actually show
Here's the
anything
thing.
illegal happening.
Freedom of speech. This is or whatever this is. This would probably fall under freedom of speech, even if he's
Yeah.
acting things out.
Well, again,
do
he
what
didn't
you want.
actually break the, like, he didn't do it on a, you know,
I don't think that it is too. Well, my point is he's acting it out. Him
Yeah.
or whoever he
just like
cast.
people act out murder on TV all the
Right.
time.
Right. So you, as a person, are allowed to take that how you want.
Mm-hmm.
And if enough people don't like it and make their voices heard, then you really screwed up, because you did something that was, I think, writing that joke, it's pretty insensitive. So as in, like, it's not a good joke. It is
Yeah. fair.
definitely crossing boundaries. So if enough people are going to backlash you for that, like, that's kind of also our freedom of speech and freedom of
Oh,
opinion.
yeah,
so
sure.
so at that same time, it's like, that's how, for me, it's like, that's how you know if you did something bad or not, is if not just, oh, listen to what everybody else says, but if that many people are kind of on the same side, that it's kind of, I'm
Isn't
trying to
that
figure out the way to
basically
say
just
this. I don't want to
follow the
say
pack?
offensive. Well, no, because humans, I feel like we have, the majority of us, if you take us as a whole,
Mhm.
know what is good and what is bad. Would you agree? Come on.
Sure.
For real, would you agree? I feel like the majority of
I
humans,
think
if you take us as a
people
whole,
follow.
I think if everybody could try, I disagree, but I think that the majority of people know what is good and what is bad.
Well,
The majority of people,
600
I
years
think,
ago, pretty much everybody was on board with slavery.
well, we're evolving, so there's that.
So we don't know what's good and bad. We just know what's good and bad right now, I guess you could say.
okay, so raping is bad.
Sure, yeah.
So my whole point being, if we are on the process of continuing to learn and have a decent grasp of what is good and what is bad,
Mhm.
then I would think that in this kind of situation, the majority of people on Earth, I don't know how many people know about this situation, if they're feeling a certain way about it, they probably have a good reason to, is what I'm saying. So we're again, anything you put out online in
Yeah.
any aspect, you have to be ready for the repercussions.
Sure.
No matter what you say, someone's going to be upset.
Mhm.
And when you go this far, you're walking on thin ice here. So I don't think it's out of the box for people to think that this is crazy.
No, I think people can get offended all they want. That's, totally within their right, obviously. People get offended by stuff all day. This is something that like, if I showed my grandmother that 1 minute and a half clip, she'd be she'd be the most offended. Like, she would die on the inside. So, yeah, I think it's totally fine if people get offended. But it's another thing to cast him out of society for it. You know what I mean? It's like one thing to go, you know what, me personally.
Has he made any
not
statements on this? Did he go, that was a bad idea, I should not have done that?
not that I've seen. It was 11 years ago. What would it make it better if he said, yeah, that was a bad idea?
I think so. I think if you make a mistake, it's good to realize if you made a mistake. If you think it's a mistake, like, that's
well,
my
maybe
point.
he does. But if he doesn't think it's a mistake, if he says, "Yeah, made a joke, it didn't land, we're moving on." Comedians
Well, then
do it
there's
all the
going to be
time.
a lot of companies and stuff like that might, like, studios and such that might not want to work with him because it gives them a bad image, or they don't agree that that was a good idea. So, and that he didn't want to own up to it. You know what I mean? Like, my whole point is, I don't have any control over this.
Yeah,
These kind of situations kind of make me uncomfortable.
really.
Yeah. So it's just like, well, like, I don't know. I don't like to.
I don't think we're talking about anything political here. I think politics make people uncomfortable, obviously, because it's crazy divisive. But we're just talking about, like, what should a man do? You know what I mean?
I
Like,
think
it's
well,
more
that,
of like
and that,
an
that's
ethereal philosophical
but that's
discussion.
super personal because for me, I think it was a very bad decision, and so the repercussions that come after it, sure, he shouldn't be killed for this, obviously. So I'm not saying, well, whatever repercussions, you deserve it. That's not what I'm saying, but
You're saying like socially, like if people are like, hey, you know, like if they say mean things to him based on that joke. I mean, like, I don't think, you know, it's pretty unfair if you know, called him like a pedo or, you know, like said stuff like that to him or anything. I don't think that's fair. I mean, the stuff, and I mean, I know you haven't seen the clip for any context, but the whole point of the clip was that it was supposed to be so shocking, and that was where the humor comes from.
right.
Which
And people have done stuff
get,
like that.
I mean, shock humor is a big part of humor, and it works all the time, but also it's almost always the thing that gets people in trouble.
Yeah.
Is when they go for the shocking, like, oh my God, that's crazy that you did, just because. Man, I feel like at this point in our, you know, culture, people do crazy stuff all the time. You got to go really shocking with stuff like this in order to actually get that reaction anymore. So, but I don't know. I just think I always get, the thing that makes me uncomfortable is when people start talking about like, okay, there's things that you can't do in this art form or medium, you know, like
Right.
you can't
And
say
like I
this,
said,
you can't do that.
whatever happens with him professionally, like I don't have any decision in that, so I don't even want to, because
And
it's such a weird space, and
Mhm.
so I can tell you my personal opinions of how I felt about it.
Yep.
But I don't really want to, like, in this situation, give a full like this is what should happen, or I feel like, you know what I mean. I don't know. I'm not comfortable with that. I don't know.
Sure.
That's
yeah.
where I'm at.
No, it's fine. I think it sucks because, you know, I've obviously seen a lot of his work and I like a lot of it. And I don't want him to get, you know, like canned off because I think his writing is funny and a lot of stuff. I mean, Community is great. And I think it's pretty clear from the vast body of his work that this is not like indicative of his larger, you know.
Yeah. I think here's what I
Personality.
think. I think that if let's say for Community, for example, let's say it was
Yeah.
still running and they were making more episodes of
Sure.
it. Let's say that. Oh, I guess Rick and Morty is a good example of this, but whatever. Whatever show he's working on. If something like this happens, if something were to happen to him or whatever, or something bad happened, I don't think, as long as the show doesn't reference something along those lines, like something terrible or something awful, as long as it's its own thing and is funny and is good and pure, the show, even if the person did something like that, I think that it would make sense to then, regardless of whether this is him or not, I guess I'm kind of speaking more generally here. A person does something terrible that is very much like, okay, well, fire them. But if the show, especially if there are tons of other people are working on it, like for most of these shows, you're not the only writer, dude. There
Well,
are
yeah.
a lot of writers.
Team
so
of
like,
writers and also all the
so to kind of
voice
write
actors
all of
and
them off
animators,
when
yeah.
he might be 10% of the writing, kind of sucks for everybody else.
He's probably more than that.
But that's my that's just an example. Even if I guarantee you it's less than half, if there's a team of writers, probably not two people.
Well, honestly, usually with how writing teams like that go is that like you'll have your head guys like him who will be the conceptual guys, and all the team of writers will kind of help it put it all together. So
Yeah,
they're not
it all depends on the
conceptually
show.
behind the.
But my point is, it's
Yeah.
not all him. So in this situation, like, get somebody else in that position, or not maybe this, but you know, something
Mhm.
like this. Somebody does something terrible that you have to kind of not work with them anymore. Get somebody else to put in their position, and then continue forward. As long as the show doesn't represent the bad part of what actually happened.
Yeah.
And then the whole should they still make money off it is kind of a whole other thing, because that's kind of up in the air. You could figure that out depending, but I don't know. That's kind of where I'm.
Interesting. Yeah. Cancel culture. What do you guys think?
I don't know. Why do we keep bringing this back up?
I find it interesting, and it has a big role to play on our on the future of film and TV and all that kind of stuff. And plus, it is kind of funny because this isn't even the first time that Dan Harmon's kind of been half canceled. He got fired off of Community at the end of season 3.
Oh, so he did get fired.
He did, yeah, but then he got rehired on for 5 and 6. And funnily enough, season 4 is known by even the people who worked on it to be the worst one because he was gone. They call it the gas leak year. So, I mean, it's kind of one of these things where I was listening to another podcast where they were talking about like the whole tortured artist like motif, you know what I mean? Where you know, in order for somebody to be great as like a writer or a creator of something, they always have to have like internal demons of struggles. Usually, like in movies, it's usually like alcoholism or, you know, drugs or something. You know what I mean? It was like in that movie we watched, Burnt. You know what I mean? Like he great chef, but
Right.
addictive.
And look,
personality
everybody
or
makes
asshole or
mistakes.
something
I
like
don't think it's not like, oh, you should never get. And this is such a different situation because everybody makes even bad jokes. But if I make a bad joke, it's probably going to be to you and not to a bunch of people. Like,
Does that make it better?
what do you mean?
Does that make it less bad? I guess is the
No,
better way
well,
to put it?
that's the point. Is you have more eyes on you or to that person, so it's like, should they be ridiculed? Because like everybody makes bad jokes, but for this, it's like he spent time with it and wrote it. But does he still stand by it? Because it's one of those. A lot of people say as long as it's funny, it doesn't matter. I think it depends on how you attack the situation to make it funny. And again, I haven't seen
that
this.
clip. Yeah.
So it's very. I don't know. It sounds like it was a terrible decision, and that you agree with
I could
that.
probably agree that it was a bad decision, and but that's almost kind of more of my modern sensibilities. I live in the year 2020 now, and I can make those. I'm kind of retroactively saying back in 2009. In 2009, how old were we? 15.
I thought you said it was 2011.
It was 2009.
Oh, 11 years ago. That's what you
Yes. Back in 2009, when I was 15, I probably would have been like, who knows? Who knows how anyone I would have reacted, or especially, I have a hard time judging people, especially for when things are in the past. I mean, it was a similar thing with
right. I understand that.
James Gunn and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and all
and
that stuff that happened
yeah.
a year or two ago. He made very similar jokes in Twitter form, opposed to filming it. But
again, and I don't know how. Like, I know that he did talk about like that was bad of me to do, and I should not have done that. And
I can't say for sure if he hasn't come out and said anything. I just don't think he has.
Anyways, no worries. I feel like we've talked about that situation long enough. Shall we jump into Back to the Future Part 3?
Sure, let's do it. Let's wrap this boy up.
All right, we're wrapping up the last part of Back to the Future. So far. If they don't make another one. Which,
I really hope they don't. They'd have to totally recast everybody. What would be the point? I mean, all these three, the sequels are basically just two reboots of the first one anyway. So
basically,
honestly, if they made a fourth one that was a reboot of, oh god, it would be so messy and awful and terrible, and I would hate it. I'm like 99% sure.
All right, so I want to address something that actually happened in Back to the Future 2.
Okay.
It's something that happened that I wanted to talk about in the last episode.
Right.
But I forgot. Did you know that Elijah Wood was in Back to the Future 2?
What?
And if you guys don't know, just because sometimes not everybody knows actors' names, Elijah Wood plays Frodo in Lord of the Rings. So, can you rack your brain quickly to try to think of who he was?
I couldn't. Okay.
I'll give you a hint. He was younger, so he was a
I'd
kid.
imagine so, because this is in 1989.
Right, so he was a kid.
So this is 11 years before. Oh my God! This is 11 years before the first Lord of the Rings, or 12 actually. I think the first Lord of the Rings was in 2001, maybe 2000. Still, and in how old could he have been? You must have been a kid, right?
Oh, you're about to look it up, aren't you? I'll just tell you.
Okay. Kid
In the future, he was in the future part. You're probably not going to hit it because
Well, did he steal the hover bike from him? No, that was a girl, wasn't it?
yeah.
I have no idea.
So it was one of the kids who was playing with the arcade game.
Oh, yep.
Did you see that? The camera just flashed. We good?
Yeah, it still says
All
it's
right,
recording.
cool. Sorry, guys.
That was weird.
Did you see it?
I mean, sometimes I swear it does like circles, but
Anyways, he was one of the kids who was playing the video game in the futuristic, like 80s style bar. And he was, I don't know which one he was, but he was, one of those kids who was
Only
like,
two
oh, you
of
got to
them.
play this with your hands. Like, he had some speaking lines.
oh, so he actually said those lines. I gotta look at a picture
believe
of
so.
him while you're saying this.
So I found that very interesting because I was watching some YouTube video, and it was one of those where it's like, oh, this actor answers like the Googled questions, like the Google suggests. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
And one of them was like, what's his first movie? And that was one of his first movies.
Okay. Whoever, if you're listening to this, Google Back to the Future Elijah Wood, and this picture will show up. And oh my God, I should have recognized him. He looks so much like him.
Does he?
Yes, the eyes, bro.
Yeah,
That's Frodo.
when you know, but if you don't know, I totally can see
I
you
don't
not
know. If you
seeing
were
it.
looking at him enough, those eyes are straight up. That is the exact same expression that Frodo does about 65 times in the Lord of the Rings.
I know, but if you didn't know, I'm not surprised. We didn't notice. But
Look at the kid in the background. No wonder that kid didn't work again.
But yeah,
Oh,
so that's
man.
a little fun fact for you for Back to the Future too.
He's wearing a colander like baseball cap. Do you see that?
Yeah,
The
the future style is great.
Oh man, that's crazy though. Man, yeah, he must. Yeah, I guess he was literally like 6 years old.
And that's where, like, we need this kid. You want to be in Lord of the Rings, dude?
Oh man, that's
All
pretty
right.
cool.
So Back to the Future Part 3.
Part
What
3,
did we
the
think?
finale.
What did we think?
Well, it's a quick synopsis. This one is Doc is stuck in 1885 after the events of Back to the Future 2, so Marty
Immediately.
must use 1955 Doc to help him get back to 1885 and get Doc out of there. That's pretty much all you need as far as the synopsis.
Yep. Basically,
Cowboy times.
let's give a little more as in the beginning of it. So at first he was basically saying, "Don't come back." Doc wrote him a letter from the past and said, "Don't come and try to save me. It might cause way too many ripples in the time continuum, whatever."
Right.
Then they find out on a gravestone that Doc has died like 2 days after he sent this message. So he was like, because if that wasn't the case, then the synopsis would be completely different. He would just be like, "All right, cool," and then go back to his present time.
Doc has died yet again to propel the plot of one of these movies.
So then that's why the setting is where it is. You have Marty McFly goes back to try to save old Doc, and they get into some Western
Wild West
rootin' tootin' good old
cowboy adventures.
Yep, and that's basically how it goes, and they are trying to get back. Anything else is pretty much a spoiler, I would say.
Yep.
But if you want to go watch the trailer like we did, then, well, we were forced to, it was put at the end of Back to the Future 2, then you get a little sneak peek of some Western adventures.
This is one of the weird exceptions as a trilogy where the second one isn't that great, but the first and third are.
I agree.
It's
glad we
like
agree.
Yeah, so like like Christopher Nolan's Batman. It's like one's pretty good, two's great, and then three's garbage. And then like I don't know, even Star Wars, one good, two known as the best, and then three like what I mean. Like I feel like that's usually how trilogies go. This one's totally weird. Where like 1 and 3 are like almost they're like neck and neck, bro. They're great. They're
Really?
yeah. I really like.
I agree because
Yeah.
I didn't know how far down you were gonna put 3, but I liked 1 and 3, and I thought you were gonna say 1 is like leagues above, but for me it's like I still think I like 1 better, but 3 is pretty close.
It's funny that like the 1 and 3 really don't have anything to do with the actual future at all in Back to the Future. It's just so it's all past related, and those are the best ones. I don't know. It's just strange.
That is interesting.
So I mean, I get what they're. Back to the Future doesn't really imply that they're actually in the future, but yeah. Either way.
So and can you explain why you like this without any spoilers?
It's honestly really strange that 2 and 3 were filmed like at the same time, because it seems like
Yeah.
they fixed all the problems that 2 has for me.
I
like,
agree.
They still obviously call back to 1 and 2, and like the well, basically I'll just say 1. But they do it in a much more appropriate way, and an interesting way that we kind of like talked about when we reviewed 2, the way we kind of wanted to see it, while also having its own story, and it's goofy, but it's also really funny. I loved it. I don't know, it's just it kept it simple. They stayed in like one location. They didn't go super high concept like I felt like they did with 2 and
Right.
moving all over the place and really convoluting the story, and having unnecessary ass parts. They just kept it streamlined, and it's just a fun adventure through and through,
Right.
man. It's great.
So I think a big part of why I didn't like 2 as much, which I think was fixed with this one, which they also do with number 1, is number 2, the moods. I think there were the mood of the entire story, right? The entire film. There were 2 of them in Back to the Future, and they were so polarizing for me. The first part of Back to the Future 2 was so ridiculous. I was laughing because it was like, what am I watching?
Right.
And then it gets pulled to the other side where they try to go back kind of to what the first one was and try to be serious, maybe a little too serious, maybe, but they try to pull it back to being a little more serious, and then it gets kind of goofy again, and then there's so many issues with how time travel works. They set it up to where it's fun and interesting enough in the first one to where you really kind of don't care. But then they do stuff in the second one that goes, well, according to what we've seen in the first one, that really doesn't make sense.
It's
like
just-
dropping off Jennifer
Oh my god, it's so
and
bad.
then changing the timeline when that is the present day's Jennifer, and then expecting her to just to be back where she is.
where you dropped her off in the alternate reality you erased.
So
what?
before obviously we get into spoilers, we'll find out if she's actually where she's supposed to be because this wraps up everything. We'll let you know. But before we get into spoilers, so there was some stuff that just seemed way out there. The moods were so polarizing for me. The way it was trying to make me like, it was so out of the blue that it just went way too nonsensical. I think in the second one,
Right.
into a way that I couldn't feel invested in the characters. Because it's fine to have a nonsensical movie, but you got to kind of stick with that throughout the whole thing and make it very clear that's the kind of movie you're going for, and it's funny because it's ridiculous. But that's not quite what the first one was. Whereas this one brings it back to that, and they do some throwbacks that actually are different and entertaining. And even the throwbacks that they bring back that are super spot on are funny because I think at this point they know that that's why it's funny. And it's a quick moment of, I know this is funny because we're bringing it back in the same way, and it's supposed to be ridiculous,
Right.
but in quick moments. It's not so out of the blue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I understand. Like when they, obviously they've done this in all three movies where Marty gets knocked out for somehow, and he
A
wakes
little bit
up.
of a spoiler.
Yeah, he wakes up with the woman who plays his mother looks just an ancestor of his that looks just like his mother, or is his mother, as is in the first one. And she kind of like reveals that he's actually still. He thinks it's been a dream. Then she reveals that he's still in whatever time zone he's in. They do it again here, but here it's funny that they've done it so many, like this is the third time doing it, and it feels like a good homage at this point.
But here's my question.
Yeah.
That is kind of what makes this movie interesting. Is this movie so much better than the second because we've seen the second? Because some of the stuff that they brought back in the second, I was like, you have to bring this back in the third because it's now going to be funny.
Yeah. Now,
So if you didn't have the second one, would it be
true,
as good?
but we could have had the second one, like we could have had stuff like that
Right.
interaction in the second one.
Right.
That wasn't necessarily a problem. With
Regardless,
the second one for me.
they did it better than the second of how
Yeah.
they brought it back. But I'm thinking even when they did bring it back, would it have been as good if they didn't do it in the second? Yes, the
I
second one
think
could have
it's-
been better for many other reasons.
Right,
but-
right. But if the second movie had done a lot of other things different, but still had called back to those,
And they could have kept that
shtick
shtick with it being just
Yeah.
still written
because
properly.
this, and the other one, they're showing literal like just tons of extra footage. I talked about this before of the first movie and spending so much time in that exact same world as the first one, opposed to just really enjoying its own world, which they should have spent all that time just in the future. I mean, they did the 55 future and then 1885. That would have been great. I wish they had kept with that, but whatever.
So yeah, that's how I feel about this movie. I think it is definitely fun, especially if you watch. So if you watch the second one, if you've seen the first, second. First of all, I'm the kind of person that finish it, like watch this whole series.
Yeah,
but especially with this movie, I'm just saying in general with series,
right.
especially if you've invested in the first two and there's one more. But if for some reason you really didn't like the second one, watch the third. It is good.
Yeah, I think. I mean,
finishes off
especially
pretty
if you like the first one over the second one, the third one's right up your alley.
Yeah, I
It's
would
got
agree.
all the great highlights for sure. You know what's kind of funny though? This movie doesn't do the which I really thought it was going to do. I thought it was going to do the Biff Marty chase around the town square that they did in the first two movies on the
Oh,
hoverboard.
yeah.
I thought they were going to try to find a way to like threw that in. I don't know, with like horses or something, but they don't. And it's kind of
So-
like, okay, great. It's like you found a new way to do the Biff Marty interaction in this movie, and I think it worked.
So we like this movie. Spoiler time.
Yeah.
Instead of doing that, they lasso him and drag him through the town. And that's
then
another
try to
interesting
hang
thing.
him, and he gets saved by Doc. It's super cool.
So another interesting thing is that for me, in Biff in this movie, the version of Biff,
Yep.
is the most threatening.
Yeah,
He
for
actually
sure.
has an ominous presence.
He's killed
He
12 people,
the
not including
goofiness of
Indians and Asian
Right.
Americans.
The goofiness of him works because it's so sporadic that you don't feel like he's not threatening. But like when he can't count and his buddy's like, oh, 7, like holding
Yep.
up 7
Yeah.
fingers, but then he turns and it's still just that like. I
Looks good in a
applaud.
mustache.
I applaud the actor in this one. This was also my favorite. Not only was he more threatening, but I
Mhm.
felt like this was his best acting job
Well, he
throughout,
wasn't
throughout these 3 movies. And I think it's heavily because of how it was written. I don't think he was a bad actor in the other ones.
Yeah.
But in this one, he got that ominous but also kind of ridiculous and silly and over-the-top bad guy,
Right.
but in a way that I still felt like they felt threatened.
Yeah, that's always kind of been Biff's character, and I think he actually has the most screen. He must have the most screen time in 2, because he's
Yeah.
like really the antagonist in 2. Like the whole plot hinges on him. But he is, he's so in 1 and 2, he's so over the top and goofy. That I think in 3 he's just toned down a little bit because he's kind of like pulled down by the. Kind of by the realism of the Old West and how, kind of grittier the world was, that's
Right.
It forced him to be less over the top, But oh my God, that shooting, dancing, moonwalk scene was insane. That was that's gonna stay in my brain forever because that
was the most out of the blue scene of the entire movie, I think. And I'm like, what is happening?
How much is Marty McFly gonna steal? How much popular culture is Marty McFly gonna steal from black people? Because now he's stolen moonwalking from Michael Jackson.
How dare you, Marty McFly?
He's stolen Johnny Be Good from Chuck Berry, and there's something else he stole in
Was
the
there?
second one. I swear, he keeps I can't remember, but it's just I found that really funny that he just keeps getting in trouble for that.
Yeah, so he tries to shoot at his feet and he's like, dance, and he literally starts dancing.
starts moonwalking, and then even after he's done shooting, he's still doing it, and all the guys are like, "What's he doing? Those crazy moves!"
Yeah.
It's so oh man,
But yeah, when they drag him
around.
around town and then try to hang him, and then Doc shows up, I actually felt like this is dope. He's like this Western steampunk cowboy because he's a scientist back in the Old West. So I was like,
Got a lever action rifle with this weird handmade scope thing on top. It's great.
and he felt like a hero when he showed up.
Yeah.
He was like, I can shoot a hair off a bug off of something for 500 meters. I don't know what he said.
it's kind of cool. Doc has because usually in the first and second one, Doc is usually in it in the beginning. Especially in the first one, Doc's in it in the beginning, and then he shows up at the end, and that's about it. And in the second one, he has more to do, but he's still not the center of it. But in this one, he gets to kind of Marty's not so much saving him; he's kind of saving himself in a lot of ways. You know
right,
what I mean?
but I would say that Doc definitely has a lot of screen time in the first one.
In the
but
first,
not
I'd
as-
say in the second one, he has a lot of screen time. But in the first one, he's there in the beginning, and then he gets killed by.
He's a pretty
The
main
Libyans.
character. I don't think.
And then he's
No, he
gone
goes
for
ba-
the entire main thing of the movie, except for
Are
when
you,
Marty
so
goes.
you're talking about present day Doc?
No, I'm just saying Doc.
He
The
goes back and
character.
immediately finds the old Doc, and they work on the time machine together throughout the movie. Sure, he goes off on his
Wait.
own stuff.
No, in the first one.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't work on the. He doesn't work with his former self on the time machine. What are you talking about?
Yes, he does. He goes, yeah, we don't have enough power. We have to generate the lightning, and then he helps him set the lightning strike.
Yeah. He sets it up okay.
happened- that doesn't
Marty,
happen at
I'm
the
sorry.
end.
I thought you meant that Doc met previous Doc, and they
No.
worked on a time machine together. I was like, what the fuck? What are you talking
Doc
about?
had a good amount of screen time. Sure, Marty went off and did his own stuff in
Right,
number
but
one.
he's less. He's more of just I don't want to say sidekick, but he's kind of just. He's not usually super involved in the main adventure. He's usually just telling Marty, "Okay, this is what you got to do."
Or
Go
he was
do it.
working
I'm
on
gonna
the-
work here.
Right. Yes. He definitely had more
But in
screen
this
time
one,
in
he's
that.
actively going around doing stuff, facing
Yes.
the main villain.
He
kind
definitely
of
had
yeah.
more character development in this one,
Right.
for sure, which I liked. So, I have an interesting fact
Oh, do ya?
about the scene where Marty is being hanged.
Yeah.
By old Ye Western Biff. What was his name?
Buford
Buford.
Tannen. Buford
Buff.
Tannen.
Buff.
Buff Tannen.
Boof. What was the future name?
Griff.
Terrible. Okay,
I
so
really stop trying there.
so when Buford tries to lynch Marty, Michael J. Fox was accidentally hanged,
Ooh.
rendering him unconscious for a short time.
Did that give him Parkinson's? That's really bad. I'm sorry.
I don't think that's
really
how that works,
awful.
Nate.
I'm sorry.
Is it bad that I almost said,
Oh no.
is that how that works? I was almost like, is that how that works?
I don't
Anyways.
get in a park.
So I thought that was what?
Sorry.
Anyways, so yeah, I just thought that was interesting. That was just an interesting fact. I wonder if the shot
Wait,
of
there's
them-
nothing more to that?
No, that is the interesting fact. How is that? Is that not interesting enough for you?
No. I want to know the story about like when you say he was actually hanged. I mean, like
It said it rendered him unconscious for a short time. He records this in his autobiography,
Okay, there we
Lucky
go.
Man, 2002. So go read Lucky Man if you want to find out the full story.
you think you can get Lucky Man 2002 on Audible.com?
Possibly.
Interesting.
Are you going to plug
I
our
have
Audible
nothing
link?
more to say to that.
So, yeah, I guess he just was gasping for
I mean,
air. And they're like,
it looked-
release him,
we
release
were
him.
even saying while we were watching him being pulled by the like somebody, his stuntman was getting pulled.
That was Michael J. Fox. It was not his stuntman.
Well, there was cut in between him being pulled by the horses to him being hung up, so we don't know, but it could be.
Michael J. Fox was accidentally hanged.
Yes,
He was being hanged. The guy
Yeah.
who was being pulled by the horses might have been a stuntman.
that's what I'm saying.
Right, but we're talking about this scene. Is what I was
Well,
talking
no,
about.
I know, but that's the leading up, and while we were watching it, I was just acknowledging that we were talking about how practical the effects are. We're like, shit, some guy actually had to get some poor sap had to be pulled behind and crashed into stuff
Michael
behind a
J.
horse.
Fox was
And it may
actually-
have been Michael J. Fox. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah,
If
that's
so,
that's another
kudos
that's
to-
another thing I wanted to congratulate this movie on. A lot of these stunts, if not all of them, looked practical. Like they actually did them.
Yeah.
And during this time, they had to do
Back
most
in
of them.
1885, they had to do a lot of their own stuff.
Not that they don't do a lot of their own stunts now, but CGI helps where they don't have to do anything too crazy.
Yeah.
Especially CGI. Even when I say stunts, also just a lot of action shots, like when they drove the train off the cliff.
Mm.
That I was like, is that miniatures? Was it? There's no way it was a real train, but it looked so real.
Could have been.
It's a lot of money.
They could have had like some old trains somebody didn't get, or they just bought.
But
I
I'm
don't know,
wondering if
man.
they kept that shot in the movie of him actually like choking out on the rope.
if it was a good take, you know what I mean?
Well, for that's what I would say. For
yeah,
real,
it would be, yeah,
it's the most realistic. You have it, why not use it? If everyone's okay.
yeah.
It's like I wish when I broke my collarbone on
It's kinda
training,
one of
I
those
wish I
things
got a.
where
Okay, I was in the middle of a sentence, but that's fine.
no one cares about your training. Come on. But it makes me wonder, though, right? Because like eventually, CG is getting better and better, and we may get to a point where we don't actually need to do any stunts practically because CG is so cheap and so available and so good that why not just replace it? What is my phone doing?
Did you
but-
see the stunt robots they're making?
No, I
That
haven't seen
stunts
this.
are people are afraid of that they might take over their jobs. I think they've started first using them in like different parks and stuff for like attractions like stunt attractions or whatever.
So stunt robots.
Yep,
So do they look like real people?
they are.
Because that's part of
Yes.
the. I mean, that's part of.
Well,
being
they
a
look
stuntman.
they look like metal, but they fly through the air like people. It's pretty crazy. If you guys
Yeah,
haven't seen
it
it, just
is.
literally look up stunt robots on YouTube, and it says Disney's stunt robots could change how Hollywood makes action movies. So,
It is still a little
Yeah.
stiff from what I'm seeing here, but it's still pretty early, obviously. It
but
seems
this
weird
is
that they'd
very
wanna-
revolutionary.
Yeah.
Like, very revolutionary. So,
It
if,
seems weird
if a
they
lot of
do-
super dangerous things, they might have them do it.
Why
I
not
don't know.
just CG it instead of doing it that way? I mean,
Because I
CG's
think
being
it would
so
look-
good.
This might look better.
I mean,
Lighting wise, everything else wise, get a robot to do it. Probably takes less time to edit all that stuff in.
maybe it might be just for time. That would make
Cheaper,
sense.
time, and it would still look
Well,
good.
damn, now stuntmen, including yourself, got two big
Let's
threats
make
to your
this clear.
industry.
Let's make this clear.
Let's make this clear, okay?
I am not a stuntman.
No, I know, but it's something you've wanted to do,
Yes,
obviously.
and still something
and
I
it's kind of
would like
scary
to.
where it's like, shit, you know what I mean? 'Cause like almost kind of on a moral basis, should we move towards away from stuntmen? Because being a stuntman is dangerous and
Yes,
people get
you
hurt.
should
as
still
shit.
stuntman. No, you should not move away from stuntmen
Interesting.
because that is a risk that we are willing. I say we. That is a well.
I
no,
am not
no.
a stuntman.
Let's put it this way. I want to. That is a learning process that I want to start going through. Teach myself some of that stuff. But me as somebody who wants to,
Mhm.
and let's say people more so people that are actually doing it and know more about the dangers of it.
Right.
That is something that they have agreed to do. They know the risks, but
Right.
that is how they feel alive. Like that is what they're passionate about. It's one thing of like, oh, it makes me feel alive by walking on the edge of buildings doing crazy stuff. If you're trained in stuff and you slowly pushing your limits in like comfortably, like pushing your limits comfortably, not being stupid and unsafe, you
Mhm.
can do some stuff that regular people would be like, never. That's insane. But like being able to push your body to those limits, I think is if that's something that you want to do and like strive to do, and it's fun and you can do it as a job, why would you move away from that? Like
I understand the business angle of why they would move away from it.
No,
right?
personal angle. I say even morally. Why should you dictate that I would not be allowed to do that just because it's dangerous if I decide that is what I want to do?
I agree with you.
Because,
to an extent.
You have to take the safety precautions
Mm-hmm.
of, obviously they wire people up, they have pads. There is such thing as abusing, stunt people as far as not giving them proper safety.
Yeah.
That is terrible. But if you have proper safety, there's always a risk going into it.
Right.
There's always a risk. So it's not should you not do it. It's just, well, let's make sure they're safe. Now, the problem is if it becomes cheaper
That's where
to make the robots, and then you go, we don't want to risk you guys, and this is cheaper. We'll do that. I don't agree. Like, I wouldn't want that. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I understand the business side of it, which is what sucks.
Yeah, I mean, if they figure this out and it can be a real reality, I mean, that's going to be the direction they go, unfortunately. I mean, there's going to be, obviously that's going to be cheaper just from like an insurance standpoint alone.
I really hope not, and I don't think, at least for a very, very long time, it will not fully replace. Maybe for a couple acrobatic things, but the organic, like, fighting style, like fighting people and jumping around while fighting, a robot cannot do that. Not now, maybe many years in the future, probably past my lifetime. But that kind of incredible in depth.
Robots, I wasn't even guessing. I would have figured, I mean, just because we've been watching just how much CG has changed in the past 10 years. I mean, where will we be in 30 years?
I feel like you always do have to have kind of a, maybe not always, maybe way in the future, but you having a human reference there, even if they're dotted up in a CG suit, helps so much and makes it feel more organic when you put all the CGI on. Just like when they do like the Hulk, a lot of that is CG based off of a person. You know what I mean?
Sure. I would just surprised if they still needed technically stunt people to do, the stuff they're just going to CG in. Because usually when you're in like a mocap suit, you're not doing anything dangerous. You know what I mean? The majority of the time, like if you're doing mocap for a character, even if the character in the show is doing something dangerous, usually I'm just saying usually.
For example, there's video game stuff. I've seen stuff with Clone Wars actually did a little bit of mocap for one of their fights.
And in the end, it was for a fight scene, and you had to be technically trained. But what they were doing, like, it didn't require you to do stunts necessarily. It required you to do fight choreography.
That is still a form of stunts, but yes,
but
fight choreography
they weren't
can be dangerous. You're like swinging heavy like rods that are lightsabers.
Sure.
Or maybe in this sense they're not as heavy, but you're swinging them at each other. There are still safety precautions.
Oh yeah. I mean,
you mean they're not flying through the air?
Yeah. Are they gonna die doing that? No.
There are still.
Do they want their main actors doing it? Also, maybe not, because one, they need to be fight trained, to do that well, especially for what you're referencing, and then also, they don't want to, bang up their boys.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's why a lot of people, even if they say they do their own stunts, they probably do a lot of them, but they have stunt doubles because there are some stuff that
Tom Cruise
they don't want
or Michael J. Fox
to risk their actors.
Yeah.
Not only because obviously they don't, but if their main actor gets hurt, then they have to postpone filming. There's a lot of questions, a lot of money getting thrown out, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of complications with that.
Anyway, quick tangent.
Yeah, I will definitely applaud them because a lot of this stuff seemed very practical and super cool. And I couldn't find a lot of stuff online about how practical it was.
I do want to try to find out if the train scene is real.
Who can find it first? I'm searching.
Oh.
All right, let's see. The train scene from Back to the Future. Did they really crash a train? The locomotive crashed through the barrier, continued off the incomplete bridge, plunged into the ravine. It literally is just give me a synopsis.
I know, yeah, it's the same thing.
I'm telling you, I can't find anything about this.
It's so weird.
For like any sort of stunts or anything. Maybe they did everything super real, but it was super on the DL, and they can't really disclose because they shouldn't have, and they weren't allowed to.
Well, you think in the years following, it was a miniature. Boom.
Nice.
Found a picture on Reddit.
Literally, right as you found that, I found it.
Yep.
But that's what I put in my notes. Like, was this a miniature?
Yep.
But
apparently it was a miniature, all those scenes where they showed it pushing the DeLorean and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously the big train crash at the end. So,
And
yeah, I
it
mean,
looked
it
like
makes
there were a
sense.
couple shots where they were climbing on the train where
Yeah.
it probably wasn't moving because it looked like there was green screen elements on some. Some of them looked good and some of them didn't. It was weird.
I never know how they make miniatures, especially when they're falling, because obviously when big, heavy objects falling versus small, little object falling look completely different. You know what I mean? Like, heavy things look like they fall very slowly. Light things look like they fall very quickly. So I don't know how they get miniature trains to look like they're falling like it's a big, heavy, real-size train. You know what I mean?
Right.
I
I do know what you mean.
Yeah,
but they
and
did a
that's
good
why.
job.
I mean, yeah, they did a good job because I was like, "Is that a real fucking train?"
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Yeah. I wanted to say something about the more of an overarching thing about this movie, which is the music. The composer for this.
yeah, you were telling me something about this.
So the composer to this was Alan Silvestri
why does that sound kind of familiar? Should I know that?
because he wrote and composed the Avengers. The Avengers theme,
Interesting.
Avengers Endgame, all
Huh.
that stuff. I'm trying to figure. I think he did most of the Avengers, at least. Marvel and us. Score Captain America would write and compose score for. Yep. So he did all
Bam,
that,
bam, 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 bam. Yeah,
which is, bro. When I hear that theme, makes me emotional. So when I saw the first, and he did them for all these movies,
right.
because I think he did the main theme for all this. And so when I saw that, I remember seeing it in the first movie, and I was like, oh, interesting. I'll like the music, maybe.
It's kind of weird because I think the Avengers and by extension this movie don't get quite the music acclaim as like a lot of our other blockbuster movies. Like Indiana Jones or like any of the John Williams stuff, or even the who's that? Hans Zimmer. His stuff with like DC, Batman, Superman, his kind of stuff. Like, they're not this guy,
Alan Silvestri.
Alan Silvestri, especially with the Avengers. I mean, I feel like people know the Avengers main theme that I just sang, just because it's been bashed into people's heads so much.
So you're basically saying that who's the guy you just Hans Zimmer and John Williams just get all the
they
praise.
kind of get all the credit. Yeah, those are the two big guys. I mean, Hans Zimmer's basically done all of Nolan's films, and John Williams has done Lucas and a lot of Spielberg stuff.
I feel like Alan
so-
Silvestri, though, because you recognize the name, I feel like he has to have had some awards.
Oh, I'm not saying he hasn't got any awards. It's just not one of these people that one of these guys that people talk about. Unfortunately, I mean, people probably don't talk enough about film composers, especially the guys who are still working now, because there's not a lot of them. Because most movies just get soundtracks. I feel like now, you know what I mean? It's less. I mean, gosh, back in the day, if you go back 100 years in film, and I've been kind of seeing this more as because I'm still going back. I haven't really checked in on this in a while, but I'm still going back and watching all of the best picture winners, all the Oscar winners from 1928, I think was the first year, to
Right.
current. And holy crap, composing for films was a way bigger deal than it used to be. I mean, like a lot of these early films, all 90 minutes to 2 hours or however long they were almost completely scored.
Because they're silent films?
Yeah. But can you imagine scoring literally, like, your movie's 2 hours and you have to score 2 hours?
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's insane. I mean, holy crap. I mean, that's so. I mean, when I noticed that when I started watching, going back and watching a lot of these, but and even when they started going, because honestly, the only Best Picture winner that's silent is the first one, and then everything after that is talking. But even the ones after that are still scored so much heavier.
Really?
But now, I mean, with contemporary music obviously bleeding into film and stuff like that, it's just not quite as big of a deal. It's still big in a lot of these blockbusters, but I feel like there's like 3 or 4 big composers working in film, and that's about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
a
or at
little
least
sad.
that you've heard of. I'm sure.
Right,
there's
that's what I'm
plenty
saying.
of
Big
others.
ones. Yeah, there's probably a bunch of little ones, but there's like a couple big
I'm
ones.
sure after the big ones, there's still some that have gotten praise and awards, but you just don't hear about it as much. And especially music like the Avengers makes me emotional when I hear it because
Yeah.
it's just so good. Even Star Wars, like that's
Oh yeah.
everybody knows. Even if you haven't seen Star Wars, if you hear anything that has to do with like
So yeah, I mean you're
that's
gonna
the
get
main,
it.
but
Yeah.
then even the
Even-
Imperial
well, yeah,
March.
yeah, Imperial March, you'll recognize. Yeah, a bunch of those. Yeah. Although, got to talk about John Williams, man. When we watched Indiana Jones, I remember thinking he's reusing a lot of the same stuff here,
Dude,
man.
I want to challenge you to an
I-
Indiana Jones versus
I really
Star
think
Wars.
I'll be able to do it very well. Maybe we could do that on one of our live streams or something like that.
It's got to
but,
be. I think we might make a YouTube video out of it.
maybe it could be. Yeah.
We'll do it at some point.
Although,
I'm
no, we can't
determined.
make a YouTube video about us listening to music. Are you fucking kidding me?
What you think we'll get?
They'll rip it down. we don't make money
You're
on any of
right.
our shit, but they'll just rip it off.
You're right. All right. Well,
Damn,
anyways,
greedy Disney.
Alan Silvestri did a good job because obviously we were whistling the Back to the Future theme at the end of this movie and
Yeah.
throughout. But I do kind of wish they used it more. They don't use it a lot in these movies.
Not a whole lot. Usually, just in like very briefly in the big moments, it'll come in, swoop in for like 15
Yeah, a
seconds.
couple
and it'll be
bars
done.
at a time,
Yeah.
and it's usually not even the full thing until like the end or somewhere
Yeah.
weird. Like, I'm totally down if they would have used it more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for real. Yeah, I think it definitely could have stopped, but you know,
Because
I mean,
you hear popular scores and you expect to hear it more, and then you watch the movie, you're like, well, I heard bars of it here and there.
right?
But it was good. I still heavily appreciate it. But like at the end when he was facing up against Buford in the end of this movie, there were a couple bars of it, and then it would like cut, and then it would come back in. I'm like, no, give me the whole thing. Give
Yeah,
it
it's
to
almost like they stopped to like because they wanted to throw in like a line or like a one-liner or something like that.
They
you
should
know?
have played it like a little bit elongated for like 60 seconds or so when they were on the train scene pushing along.
Yeah, I know. Really, I mean, I guess I can't say for sure if they did or didn't. Trying to remember back, but I guess they didn't because I certainly don't remember it, and I feel like I would have. But yeah, I feel like we haven't really. We've been getting off on a lot of like really big tangents, but we haven't talked about like a lot of the main parts of this.
I kind of like it though. We're breaking down
Yeah.
different what aspects of the movie are making it good, and then we're talking about those aspects and how they're affecting the film industry. I don't know. I'm liking it. We're
No,
going
it's
a little
cool.
different
yeah,
here,
yeah.
but
But it's kind of like a
let's get
wrap
back.
up
Let's
of
get
like
back
the
to,
whole.
Yeah, let's get back to
thing,
this
yeah.
series. I guess. I'm sorry.
I thought it was kind of cool in this movie that they give Doc a love interest. It's like a cool sign off. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
because obviously Marty is with the same girl through all three, which I think is neat. You don't have to like. Man, I tell you what, if this movie had been made like 20 years after it had been made, like more recent, they totally would have had Marty start with Jennifer, have them break up in the second one over some dumb shit, and then have them come back and be together in the third one. Like, there's no way they would have been able, because that's
As
how
like the main
all-
character doesn't have a proper love interest that they're working
they have
for.
they have to like they have to put in that artificial drama of the will they won't they into the story
Yeah.
to make it more interesting, quote unquote, and then have him just end up with this person at the end anyway. Like
Right.
I like this movie's weird because he's with the girl and the girl's part of the movie, but there's no drama with it. There's
Well,
just,
not even is there no
good.
drama, but they put her in the end of the first movie
well, she was in the
because
beginning too, but yeah.
right, but they put her at the end as well of the first movie to show that like, oh, he made it back to his time, and then they left us with a cliffhanger where he takes her in the DeLorean, and I don't think that they were
They
expecting
screwed
that.
it up in the second one.
We talked
so
about this in the
bad.
last
Yeah.
episode, but when they had to start with her being brought, they were like, we didn't really think about how we're gonna write this
crap,
in.
what do we do? Knock her out twice? Okay,
Put her
that's
in
great.
put her in an alley. Awesome. So it felt like they had to just kind of write her in. So my whole point is she was not a major part of really any of this,
Not really.
which
no.
is kind of cool because a lot of like a huge conflict of a lot of
I
mo-
loved how the woman was left out.
no.
Have I made that clear? That's my favorite
That
part.
is not what I mean. What I mean is a lot of movies nowadays, a love story has to be one of the focal points of a film.
Yeah,
And
because I mean, and it's very cynical too, because movie execs think that women won't show up to films if there's not a love interest angle to it, which is fucked up.
well, and my whole point is like these movies for the most part didn't really have to do that. To be fair, they did do this in this one, but it added to this character. They did it
Yeah,
after we
I
have a
liked it.
backstory
Yeah.
for this character. It wasn't the entire purpose of
Right.
this character was to have this love story. It added depth and
because it resolves
character-
Doc. Because imagine if the third one had been different, and instead it would just been Doc and Marty trying to get back to 1985, and they do succeed. Then Doc would have had to destroy his time machine, realize that his main and only scientific achievement, which was the DeLorean, was a failure, and that's because not a failure. It worked, but he had to get rid of it. And then what? He was just supposed to die old. That
Right.
would have been kind of a sad. Now he has like a family, and he rides a time train, and it's great. You know what I mean?
That's what the new movie's going to be called, The Time Train.
The Time
That's what they're
Train.
going to do
It's
for the
gonna be
next movie.
Doc's
It's going to be
kids.
yes, they're going to go to the
Oh,
future so it doesn't have the normal people.
Stop pitching. I don't want this. I don't want
And it's to
this.
be called The Time Train.
Oh my
It's
god.
going to be similar to like how Doctor Sleep was,
Oh god, you're killing me.
but in a way of like you have somebody from the past, but everybody else is new, and they visit the old places. They're going to go back to Hilltown. What is it?
Hill Valley?
Hill Valley, and go through all the same places in the time train.
I hate it. I hate it.
It probably would be really bad.
Oh my god, that'd be so bad. I was so happy because I was like, okay, they can't reboot Back to the Future because there's no one's left. There's no characters. There's no story here.
Then they introduce the
and
kids.
then you pitch something, and I'm like, oh god, they
'Cause
totally
you can see it
could.
happening.
Yes, that's my point. Is that stop pitching. I do not want this to happen.
But yeah, I think that they really added that, like you said, I think it added to the character development.
It gave him a good wrap-up ending that he deserved. I mean, Doc's great. He's one of the best parts of this whole thing. Christopher
Yes.
Lloyd kills it. And I liked seeing that, these movies should end happy. They shouldn't have, like, some weird twist, gritty,
And they got us because we thought it was going to end kind of dark. We
Yeah.
thought they weren't going to give him a proper send-off.
Yeah, man, I tell you what, that movie does a good job as far as, like, again, this movie's also pretty predictable. You called out specifically two parts. You were like, exactly this is about to happen, and then boom, exactly that happened twice
At the
throughout
beginning, when he was traveling to the future, he was
The past.
or the past. He was like, "I'm going to run into this sign with the Indians." They're like, "It won't be there because."
the actual Indians will be there, and he'll
No,
run
well,
straight
hold
into the
on.
Indians.
Yeah,
Oh.
they said it's not going to be there because you'll hit 88 miles an hour before you hit it, and there's nothing here in the past.
Yeah.
I said he's going to run straight into the Indians, not as a poster. They're actually going to be right there. Happened.
Yep.
I knew it the second it happened. I was like, they wouldn't have mentioned it.
Man, I was so afraid when they showed the Indians. I mean, Native Americans. I guess we should really be calling them. When they showed that, I was like, "Oh no, this movie's gonna have Native American. Like, is this is this movie gonna tread on some ground it should like for the '80s? Because in the '80s people were not as
Example.
PC as we are now. So I
They
was
called
like,
them Indians, whereas now it's like, well, to
that's
me,
that's a light thing. But I mean, yeah, because
just a whole side tangent really quick
Yeah.
here. It doesn't. I also don't say Indians because it doesn't really make sense to me.
well, yeah,
Because
it's literally not. Yeah,
I call people from India Indians, and then when
how
you
dare you?
talk to, and then when you talk about Native Americans, they get confused. To me,
Yeah.
I get confused. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about?
Honestly, the term Native Americans doesn't even really make a lot of sense because I mean they don't refer to the place as America.
America?
Yeah, they would.
Yeah.
So I mean,
But
they
it's the
should have a
closest
better.
thing.
I mean, they have obviously all the tribe names and stuff like
Native-
that, but
Native Pangea? What do you like?
it's not Pangea. That would be all of us, sort of.
I
in a
guess
weird
you're right.
fucking way. No, I'm just saying that like I really thought that the Native Americans were gonna have a greater role in this movie because I couldn't remember from what I had seen it previously, and I was like, oh no, this movie's gonna be really insensitive.
You basically watched this for the first time. Watching this with
Pretty
you,
much, yeah.
your reactions were so, wait,
Yeah.
what? They're not giving him a send-off, which is how I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, wrapping up Doc's character,
Like I said, all I remembered was, oh yeah, that's the Wild West one, and that was it.
yeah. But wrapping up Doc's character, at first I wanted him to bring her back. Like I was like, yeah, bring her
The
back.
love
Because,
interest,
and
yeah.
I really like the way we were talking about this while we were watching it. There's writing issues, especially in the second one, with they say don't do this, and they kind of go against it. To be fair, that is kind of one of the only issues in this movie, a big issue, that Doc says don't mess with things in the past too much. It's going to change things in the future. And he's like, yeah, I haven't met anybody named
He's
Clara.
Totally fucked that up.
Because I would not introduce myself to people like that, trying to stay out of things as much as possible. Then a guy walks in the door to his little workshop and goes, hey, you volunteered to meet this person. Oh, yeah, I did. The new school teacher. What are you talking about? You just said you don't So that doesn't make any sense.
Honestly, him wanting to willingly stay in 1885 doesn't make any sense either because that's going to have ramifications.
Yes.
I mean, if you compare Doc in the third one to Doc in the first one, he was so like, listen, Marty, don't talk to anybody. Don't look at anybody. Try not to talk. Like, don't do anything. Like, just be a nobody. And then and he goes back and he's like, I'm just going to live the rest of my life back here. Just telling
Doesn't make
people.
sense. So that is probably one of the
Yeah,
biggest
yeah.
issues of this movie. But
I love how they try to like they come up with like bullshit reasons to make it okay. Like obviously the woman he falls in love with was supposed to die on a horse in that crash that the valley was named. It was like what was it? It wasn't
Clayton.
Clara.
It was Clara Clayton.
Yeah, Clayton. The Clayton Ravine or whatever was where she got was supposed to get tossed off her horse. that got scared by a snake, but Doc
But they
saves
saved
her because he's back in time, and so therefore he's able to. So it's kind of like, oh, I'm allowed to interact with her because she was supposed to die anyway, which doesn't really make sense. But I feel like it was the movie's
once
way
she
of
did
like,
die, everything's changed anyways. And they
Right.
didn't say that. They didn't say we're going to interact with her because she's supposed to die anyways. But maybe
that
that's
was the vibe I was getting as far as like, oh, okay, now he can marry her because it's not like taking away from her marrying who she was originally supposed to marry, or
But her
like,
being
you
alive
know.
changes so much more than
Exactly. If anything, if he was really like stood true to his beliefs, he
Push her
should
off
have
a
let
cliff?
her. He should have let her die.
just push her off a cliff. When he realized he's like, oh no, I changed
Yeah.
it. Toss
Yeah.
her off a cliff. But okay, what I was going to say, regardless of all that, which
Yeah.
however you want to put
Well, we
put
had
that on.
problems with the first movie too. You remember we went all
Right.
these tangents about how the science doesn't make sense. It doesn't. Like it's okay.
This
at
is
an
not. This
extent.
has nothing to do with the science not
Yeah.
making sense. This has to do with the character doing
That's
things
true.
that he didn't.
Yes.
That he said he wouldn't do.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, I liked in the end the way that they wrote it because when she got onto the train, they were past the point of no return, which they made clear,
Right.
and then the train was basically going to explode and then fly off a cliff.
Right.
The only chance for her to survive is basically we have to take her with us. And I was like, this is brilliant because then, like you said while we were watching it, this gets rid of the moral dilemma of should I, shouldn't I? It's she's gonna die. Now, you could stick to Doc's original character and say,
Yeah.
she's supposed to anyways, see you later. But he's in love. That's a good,
So-
what's the word I'm looking for? It was a good motivation.
Mhm.
And so that gets rid of the whole moral dilemma of, well, they shouldn't have done this. Then they kind of forced to take it with. So I wanted that to happen, but I kind of like the way they ended it. They ended it with a twist where they kind of ride off and he saves her on the hoverboard.
And you think, like I thought, I was like, they're not gonna have a send off for Marty and Doc. They're just that was it. That was their.
But the second they went back to the
Ah.
train tracks, I said, he's coming back.
Yep.
No, it was the second that you hear a train coming. I said, that's Doc. That is exact.
Doesn't
Doc
make
is
any
coming
sense how you heard the train coming before it arrived in our time.
back. No, you heard the things go down. The roadblocks go down.
Oh
and
yeah.
the
Well,
train
still,
dings.
that shouldn't have come because there's no other train. So why did that come down?
You're right.
So the thing about that, okay, so just to clarify, because you were talking about that moral dilemma part where basically Doc isn't supposed to bring her back, but wants to stay with her, and so. But when she gets up on the train, she's therefore put in a position where if Doc doesn't bring her back or doesn't save her in some regard, she's going to die. Therefore, eliminating the moral dilemma from Doc. But I'm a little conflicted on this because in another movie that's a little bit more serious, I would find that as kind of cheating because when you have the circumstances take away the moral dilemma from a character, therefore that the character doesn't have to make a choice and solidify his position as who he is. And instead, he gets a cop out, and he goes, "Well, I was forced into this position, so it's not actually. I can either believe it or not believe it based on your interpretation." Does that make sense?
Yes and no. So it makes sense,
Mhm.
but I think it depends on the situation. I think it works in the situation. Let's
Right, that's-
say he brought her with. Let's
Yeah.
say like that was the only way out, and so that's the dilemma, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in this situation it would have worked because whoa.
What?
I just literally my mind just emptied of everything in my brain oozed out of my ears or out of somewhere in my body. I forgot literally everything I was saying.
Nice.
What were we talking about? Okay, so that moral dilemma. Yes, the writing. Okay. I think that it works for this film because the motivation. I'm really trying to get back on track to what I was saying. I had a really good point, and now it's just completely gone. Okay, character development, motivation. I think that's where I was going with this.
Yeah.
So this is really hard. I'm trying to grasp. I derailed.
Oof.
We're talking about trains.
Oof.
You get it?
Yes, I fully understand.
So what did you say? You said basically it prevents.
It takes away the choice from the character. Therefore, whatever the character's decision is.
I remember.
Okay,
Stop.
Perfect.
So I think that this works because his entire if he had stuck more to his guns on not kind of interacting with people throughout the entire movie, it would have had even bigger of an effect. But this kind of allows him to kind of develop character development in a way that him loving this person and that relationship and all of that is more important than maybe something else changing, or kind of reinforcing the fact that your future isn't written in stone. And they say that's a huge message throughout this movie. You can change it. So even if something changes, they can then fix it later. It was kind of the guilt, similar to the guilt that you had. Like, I would feel so guilty, is what you said, if I just dumped off this version of Jennifer,
right,
of my girlfriend on a porch. Even if it got rewritten, you'd be like, are you sure there's not an alternate universe where we just left her in this terrible place?
Yeah.
So in this way, I've decided that I love this person. I have to take them with me. I also don't really have a choice to take them with me, and it allows them to kind of fix that.
Well,
have
the problem is
you
that
see what I'm saying?
it gives Doc, it allows him to have his cake and eat it too, because he not only can he still stand by his moral, his ethics, I should say, of like, you shouldn't alter the past or the future, you shouldn't mess with time, basically, but it also allows him to have his happy relationship. And so if he had to make the choice, normally he would have had to either give up his own happiness in order to uphold his values, his beliefs, and don't mess with time, or give up his values in order to obtain happiness. And so normally, I think in a more serious, grounded movie, having that choice for a character and having him go with one gives a more weighty and more emotional story.
I guess.
In this, it's so lighthearted, and we just want Doc to be happy that we don't really care. Right. You know what I mean? And so that's why I'm not saying it's a big deal, but I think in another movie, normally that taking the choice away from the character and just having the situation force something upon them, I think is usually a bad decision writing-wise, and I find it is cheating.
And maybe what I said actually would work better, not in this situation, because he doesn't, I guess, fully get to make the decision of choosing that happiness, because he doesn't really need to. It's just, I don't want her to die. So maybe it's a little more cheap. You know what I mean? Like if if he had to make that decision, maybe even what I said would be a little more prevalent.
It's like there's no choice, because any normal person would just try to help her not die.
Right.
So there's no interesting ethical choice there as far as like mess with time, be happy, don't mess with time, don't be happy. That goes away, and all it is now, save girl. It dumbs it down basically.
Yeah.
But in this kind of movie where you just want your character to be happy because he's a fun, happy-go-lucky character and it's just a fun movie, I'm glad they went this route opposed to trying to, especially if they tried to ground it where like Doc is all sad because he, denied himself happiness so he could uphold the value of don't mess with time. That would have been a bummer. That's not what this movie's about. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's just kind of my point as far as kind of talking about like writing and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that they probably did. I another quick tangent, I guess. I liked how they used the hoverboard in this movie, maybe better than the other movies. Like it was useful, and it was a cool nod to the
other movie. Used a shit ton in two. Well, I mean, it's not in one, obviously, but
again, all they did was mimic another scene from.
Well, that, but also like at the end, like Marty's on the hoverboard, like sketching on his car and stuff like that.
But it's
just got a lot of screen time.
It was like, I have this tool. It's also from a last movie.
Yep.
Reference, but it's useful.
Yeah.
So it was kind of
cool.
Plus
it's Doc on it, not Marty, which is fun.
Yeah.
So but how goofy was it that he just like he slides it back, Doc picks up Clara, and they just ride off. They just zoom off, and we're like, funny. What? He's just zooming away.
Which once I realized what they were doing, because I thought he was trying to catch up to the car,
and he like went way out, which doesn't work because the hoverboard is basically like a skateboard, except it just doesn't have to touch the ground.
But it made sense that he let go and then they drift off. At first, I was like, "What is happening? How is he gaining speed?"
Yeah.
I was like. But anyways, what you were saying, I had a mad brain fart right there. So I feel like I had a better point because basically what I explained just proved yours, which was that decision that I made that he was making worked, but it didn't in this as much because he was more forced. But I feel like I had a better point instead of just whatever. It doesn't matter. I pretty much agree with you for the most part, but I enjoyed it. It was still fun, and the way they wrapped up his character. And they actually brought him back at the end. I think it added for a nice twist because at first I just wanted him to just do something for yourself, Doc. And in this way, he kind of did. But I thought it would also be fun to bring somebody from the past into the future like that. You know what I mean? So, I don't know.
Yeah, although we don't really get to see any of that interaction. You know what I mean? We don't get to know what that's like.
No, because he's like, I already went to the future. I buffed up my train, and it can fly.
I guess that's the implication is that they already went to the future.
He goes, are you going to the future? He goes, I already went there. And at first I thought that was he meant the second movie, like, I don't have a need to go back. I'm good. But then his train started flying. I was like, that's what you mean.
Yes, okay, that's why. Yeah, that's still, yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense because, I mean, obviously him making a steam. Then why did he still say it was steam powered if he already went to the future with the train? That's,
Maybe he wanted to continue to have his kids grow up in the time period they were in, and the time travels are like, hold on, stick with me. The time travel is almost like fun vacations, but he doesn't want to make them go too crazy as far as like not knowing where they belong. So they still belong,
train, dude.
because that's why they're still dressed in their old Western vibe. So maybe that's just they get time vacations, time travel vacations, which they can take whenever they want because they can come back right to when they left.
If you had a time vacation, where would you go?
So the main source of power still has to be steam related. I don't know. I'm just brainstorming.
I guess
here.
so. Yeah.
The only thing that I wish they had done a little better was the send off between Marty and Doc.
Doc brings back the photo they're in with the original clock tower.
He goes, "Here you go."
Marty
Bye.
looks at it, and Marty goes, "Man, thanks, Doc. This is great." That's it.
And he goes, "Where are you going to?" Bye. Like he knew. He was kind of just be like, "Oh yeah, whatever. Bye." I wish they had like hugged, had something a little more emotional.
Yeah,
That's all.
I mean, it's weird. It's a weird relationship. Obviously, I mean, from the beginning, it's just like a 16, 17-year-old boy and his 80-year-old friend.
They never explain why they hang out. Still bothers me. But anyways, and then they wrap up Marty's character. That was fine. They basically, I think they wrapped up Marty's character with the main message of the story,
Right.
Which I'm gonna get like real here for a second and. Whatever, if you want to call it cliche, I really liked the message of the story. I really liked where they said over and over that like you can't, or that you can basically change your own future. The future is not written, that you can change it. It can be whatever you want. Like I like that. I think it's a powerful message, and it was fun. It was a fun way to kind of show that, because I think that's something they learned throughout this entire thing, that even if you have to go like back in time to prove that you can change it, you can change it in present day. Like whatever you do now is the future. What you're seeing in the future, according to this timeline, is what's the most predictable way of things lining up. But if you go back and something changes and you do something different, like you can always change the outcome.
I mean, yeah, that's basically Marty's arc, is that the way he changes his future isn't by using a time machine. It's by
Being a good dude.
It's by stop letting people get to him.
Yep.
By calling, because what are you, a chicken? And you have the dramatic turnaround.
That's another thing I liked, was because that was such a dumb thing in the second one.
Yeah.
It was funny in the third one they called him Yellow, because it was new. It's like, no one calls me Yellow. It's like, dude, anybody can call you anything and you'll say no one calls you that. And that's why it was funny, because it was like, we're doing this again.
Yeah.
But any other specific points of this movie that we want to touch on before we wrap up like the entire series? I'm trying to go through my notes.
I mean,
here.
there's a bunch of little stuff. I like that, like, they called him Calvin Klein in the first one, and then this one he kind of names himself Clint Eastwood, which is, he tries to name himself something cool.
Another fun fact. They asked Clint Eastwood for permission before they used his name, and he approved.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess, gosh, would they have had to? Probably not. I don't know how that works as far as likeness and stuff like that, but you probably could have gotten away with it. But yeah, I don't imagine you would have been.
And there's a
too bad of
couple.
stickler.
I'm trying to think of anything bad too, because we definitely praised this movie, which is fine. But picking apart, there were a couple things that's like, why are you doing this? But whatever. For example, when Clara goes, "I need a one-way ticket out of here," and I'm like, why is she
as
leaving?
far away as you can go.
Because he said he's leaving.
Yeah.
So, and you're supposed to be a teacher in this town. You're abandoning your life
She
and
never
your future
teaches.
and your job to leave this man who's leaving you? I don't understand.
Well, to leave the town that the man who's leaving you, who you're upset about, is leaving.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this movie has the most character development, which is very interesting to me. I really like that in movies. That helps sell it for me. Not only for Doc, but like you said, Marty, learning to not care what people think. That was very strong.
Yeah, it's kind of his like trilogy arc, in a way. Although, I mean, I still don't think it's really a big deal in the first one. It's never really brought up. But yeah, it's a little strange. I almost feel like, because of how big Marty playing music was in the first and second one, that he should have had some kind of like musical send off, but that's just like
I thought you were going to say he should have played music at the
festival.
Like, so now you want more of the flashbacks. Okay.
No, not at then. That would have been odd. What would he have been like, ripping it up on a banjo or something like that?
Yes, I would have been down for it. Oh, another thing of a flashback or a callback was I, at the beginning, kind of wanted Doc's love interest to be an ancestor of Jennifer.
Okay, we were saying that, but
And I was like,
realize how
missed
creepy that would have been.
By the end, yes. But I was like, missed opportunity. But then at the end, they meet. So it's like, you look a lot like me. Like, or they see each other. So, yeah, it kind of would have been, but it kind of would have been funny, too.
I do like the.
Then they could have been related. Doc and Marty could have been related.
Do we want that?
Why not? At least it gives them a
Wait,
reason to
why
be.
would that have been Doc and Marty would have been related? He would have been with some weird version of Jennifer.
Right. So he's with Jennifer's ancestors, right?
Yeah.
And
so
then he
they
goes
would have
with
been
Jennifer, like, very
in-law.
distant.
They would have been in-law,
Yeah,
not
but
actually
they're
related.
Yeah.
Not the same thing.
In-law related. It's related. I say it's related, just not
in-laws?
blood related. That's why the term blood related exists, because
I don't
there's
know.
non-blood related
Yeah.
relatives. Hey, my in-laws are my in-law relatives. I mean, I don't have in-laws right now.
I guess that's pretty extended.
Well, I don't call them in-law relatives. They are a version of whatever. Get out of here. There was one other part. Oh, okay. So another weird part is they could not. I think we talked about this in the second one. They did not get the dad, Marty's dad, the actor back for the second or third movie, which means usually anytime there's ancestors like that, for example, when he goes back, his mom is his great grandmother, but the great grandfather is a version of himself,
A
like he
version
has
of
to play
Marty.
him.
So that's they're really driving home the incest stuff here, man. What is going on?
Well, I don't think that was the intent because again, it's you want somebody that looks like somebody in the family
right.
to show that you're a relative and they're played by those same people. Just like, for example, Biff plays an older and younger version of, or actually just older, well, whatever, older version of himself in all the movies.
Yeah. Well, no,
Marty
he plays a younger Griff.
Hasn't gotten as many examples or chances to do that, so it kind of makes sense.
Marty
but it's the
plays-
fact that you show his parents and then you show his parents in different dimensions already.
Well, it's just odd that all the lines of his mother have looked the same, apparently.
Yeah.
And then, but his father is changing, and at some point, he looked exactly like his modern day self, which would be fine by itself. But considering how the first one's his own mom was super hot for him, that's what makes it creepy.
Yeah, it's the fact that you saw his parents act as different versions of themselves. We never saw Biff's parents. You know what I mean? So Biff can always act as his own dad.
Is that why Biff is who he is?
As his own dad, as his own son, as his you know what I mean? Because that is the Biff family
Biff
guy.
is just a continuum. There is no...
But Biff is the family guy that you use to represent the older and younger versions. Whereas Marty, you want a non-Marty character to still drive that point home, but they had to use Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
So that was kind of strange.
Do you think they should have killed Buford Tannen? It just ended the Biff line back in 1885.
And then he comes back and there's no Biff. Like he gets back to normal present day.
Yeah.
No Biff.
No Biff. I don't. I mean,
no.
We don't
like
know.
you said,
how
you
that
wanted us
would've-
to end happy, and that just kind of
Biff
makes
is
it dark.
such a bad guy.
Still makes it dark.
I'm just saying, it's almost kind of like, if you gotta. I mean, it's not quite like the Hitler comparison, obviously, but it's kind of like that, right? If you go back and you find Hitler's ancestor, do you off Hitler's ancestor because you know they're gonna make Hitler?
This just isn't the type of movie that wants to do that, though. They want.
Yeah,
they don't-
sure. I'm kind of going outside of it. I'm going a little bit more deep, concept here, but you know what I mean? Especially if Hitler's ancestor is also a bad guy like Buford is. I mean, he's killed like 12 people, so,
Rough and tough.
It just seems like every version of, no matter what time period you go in, if there's a Biff there, he's a bad guy.
He's gonna suck. Well, Back to the
Aw,
Future
man.
3, better than 2.
Better than 2. 1 and 3, real solid. 2, real Unfortunately, you have to watch all of them because if you go from 1 and then straight to 3, you'll probably get what's going. Like, it's not like you'll be lost, but you'll feel like you're missing out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just not worth doing.
Well, the favorite part for me, let's go through and rate all these
Wow.
movies. First of all, how do you feel about this whole trilogy? I think, like we said, the first is good, the third is good, the second one is eh. I think it's definitely worth watching. Watching these movies, and you've seen
I'd seen the one a bunch.
Right. You are seeing a lot of this for almost the first time.
2 and 3 for pretty much. I'd seen like all the 25th, like the first 45 minutes of 2, like I knew really well.
So it's
and
the
then
basically
everything after that was just gone.
the second half of the entire trilogy.
Basically, yeah. So 1, I knew all the
Yeah.
beats of that, and then 2 was
So watching such a classic
mhm.
for the first time, I will say that I think this one holds up.
Yeah.
Because obviously the second one, not as much, but as far as just a trilogy goes, and especially the first one, they do some really cool things, especially for the time. Even now, there are definitely a lot of funny moments in these movies that they still hit today, those jokes and all that. And some of the visuals definitely still hold up, and even the ones that you can tell are definitely CG and was made in that time, from what I'm seeing, seem to be pretty freaking good for that time. And I can see how this like quirky, fun, new concept of a movie that was actually done well and is entertaining, like it has all the elements to create something that has this like cult classic. I don't know if that even needs to be said, but I feel like it does when I watch these movies, that some of them I'm like a little more disappointing because I feel like didn't quite live up to what I wanted. But this was just good all around. Like it was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
As far as Spielberg goes, because there's, we did Indiana Jones not too long ago, and now that was Spielberg, and obviously this is also Spielberg. If you had to compare the two, where do you think you'd land them?
Oh, which one I like better?
Yeah, if you could. I mean, it's kind of a hard comparison, cause but not crazy different.
It's not crazy. I think I would go Indiana Jones, just because. It's so different. Like, these are definitely just more lighthearted and fun and funny. So if I want something like that, I'm going to they are close enough to where if it's like, let's watch one of these, it's hard to pick. It's going to depend more on the mood.
Yeah.
Whereas if they were farther apart, let's say I didn't like Back to the Future nearly as much, no matter what mood, I'm like, we're going to watch Indiana Jones because you're going to like it and it's good. Back to the Future, it's not bad, but we got to watch Indiana Jones. You know what I mean? Like, because it's Indiana Jones. I can still say, we got to watch Back to the Future because Back to the Future, and it's good. So I think I would lean, as far as just overall what I like a little more, maybe Indiana Jones. But this one, they're so close, I think it's more mood-based, just because it's fun for completely different reasons, but I would pick Indiana Jones over this.
Oh, man, I'm trying to compare them as a whole. It's kind of funny. They're a little similar in a way, as far as like I feel like Indiana Jones, like Raiders and Last Crusades, are like, for most people, that's like their big ones that they like a lot, and then Temple of Doom is like the kind of the weird.
Temple
one
of Doom's
in the
not
middle.
bad. You like it a lot.
It doesn't apply to me because I like Temple of Doom a lot because it's weird. Oh man, yeah, I think I would lean just slightly onto Indiana Jones, just because it's just a little bit more my speed as far as the action adventure kind of stuff. And Harrison Ford, come on, you can't. I mean, Marty McFly does not hold a candle to Indiana Jones, like as a two character to character. It's just unfortunately like
they're so
as
different.
far as leading
so
men
hard.
go. You know what I mean? Like I would just feel like I would rather watch Indiana Jones get into hijinks above Marty McFly. Just individual. I mean, the movies themselves are much larger than the individual characters, but that's kind of where I'm kind of putting it down. But
that's why it's so mood based for me, because they're so different.
Yeah.
I like Marty McFly because he is this out of time guy who's just this teenage kid trying to like get all this stuff done.
Right.
But that's kind of why I like this one, because it had an Indiana Jones vibe. This third one.
Yeah.
Like chasing down the train.
Yeah, he's in a weird spot, and
the action adventure of this definitely sold it more. And yeah, I don't know. I definitely really enjoyed it. And I would say, like I said, Indiana Jones a little more. I think that they have, all of Indiana Jones movies, because we liked 4 more than we thought that we would.
Yep.
I think that 2, when you compare it to the rest of its trilogy, 1, 2, and 3, lacks so much more than any of the individual movies in Indiana Jones compared to the Indiana Jones saga.
Okay.
Make sense?
So Back to the Future 2 is much worse than any of the 2 Back to the Future than Indiana. Well, even Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yes. When we watched that, I liked it more than
it's true.
I remember.
Expectations do have a lot to play there. I wonder, because we went into Kingdom of the Crystal Skull thinking we're not going to like it, and then ended up being pleasantly surprised. And then at the end of the same time, we went into Back to the Future 2 kind of like, okay, Back to the Future 1 was good. This one's probably going to be good too, and then kind of being let down.
But
So it's a weird scale.
I kind of disagree a little bit because I remember watching Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and I enjoyed it, but I was younger. So I
Yeah.
just knew what other people thought. It wasn't that I thought it was going to be bad because there are movies that other people think are bad that I enjoy.
Yeah, sure.
So what I mean by that is the 4 movies of Indiana Jones are all closer together than where 1 and 3 of Back to the Future are so much better than the second one comparatively. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? That
No,
margin
that
is-
totally makes sense.
margin's bigger. And
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason I like Indiana Jones. It's better as a complete saga, in my opinion.
Yeah.
With that being said, it's time to put some numbers on this.
Ooh.
All right, let's start with numero uno, Back to the Future. Nate, you're up.
My numbers are going to be pretty simple. I think Back to the Future is a solid 8
Okay.
on the meaningless scale of nothing.
I would say Back to the Future is a 7.7.
Wow.
Very high 7.
Okay. Pretty high 7. Yeah. Trying to think of where, like, again, this number scale doesn't hold up to comparison at all. Just because, I mean,
It's
if you
your
try to-
likeness. It's how
Yeah.
how much do you like it?
Yeah.
Right now.
I enjoyed it an 8 amount of 10.
Which one?
The first one.
First
yeah,
one?
yeah. Number 2. Ooh, the bad one. You want to go first?
Number 2, sure, I'll go first on this one. Number 2, I would say I know it's lower, but I think I'm even putting lower than I originally thought. 5.2. I wanted to put it even 5 because I was so back and forth that the first half of the movie I felt was so ridiculous, but I found some humor in that ridiculousness. So that edges it a little over that mediocre. It was still enjoyable.
I am
And
surprised
I think
you
it's
put it that low.
I
thought-
think it's
yeah.
worth watching to the rest. Well, because of how much it does tie into the rest, I'll put it at like a 5.5.
I mean-
Because I enjoyed these movies. We'll put it 5.5.
That's funny. 5.5 is where I've known what my numbers were since
Because you knew we were
brought it
doing
up.
this.
So 5.5 was where I was going to put it at, but I swear you were going to put it at like a low 6. I didn't think you'd put it that low.
I think it's
one.
5.5.
No,
No,
I agree. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Actually, I might need to change. I'm doing bad with this today. I might need to change my first one because we're going to get into the third one, and the third one is at least a 7.7. But you start. What do you think? Number 3?
The third one, I am going to do this. I think it is a 7.9, just because
What I
I'm
did
gonna
for Indiana
put-
Jones.
I'm going to put it 1 decimal below. They are so, I like both of them so much, but just because of the nature of the first one, basically inventing the concept, I feel like it has to etch out the third one.
I hate to do this because you're going to feel like I'm copying you. But when I said I kind of think I need to change the first one, I wanted to put it in an 8, and I was only going to put the last one a decimal behind. So
we had the
this
exact
is
same
the-
score.
And I don't want you to think that I'm just like going along
No,
with
that's
you on
hilarious. That's
that. Because
great.
I wouldn't. But
We
this is
never agree on stuff.
this
This
is
is,
the-
amazing.
this is the first set of movies that we are the exact same score. We have
Wow.
8, 5.5, and a 7.
7.9.
Which, to be honest, this one pretty much rounds out to whatever that middle number is probably what I'd rate the whole thing as a whole saga, like a whole trilogy.
Yeah.
Because usually I like to give it my own personalized number. But wherever that middle point is probably where I would put it, which is, what is that? Probably a 7.3 or something
I can
like
find
that.
out very fast.
Because I do think it definitely deserves to be in the 7s. And we have the 2 high 7 and 8 plus the 5.5. So those 2 high numbers are going to bring it up to probably around 7.
7.1.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
That works for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about right. I think it's funny we didn't talk about this much, but obviously all 3 of these movies are directed by Robert Zemeckis. And he has done, I think, arguably the 2 best Tom Hanks movies, Castaway and Forrest Gump. Were also his
I've
other
seen neither
2.
of those.
Really?
Really?
Oh man. Are you interested to see them now?
Yes, actually, 100%. Well, I've been interested in seeing them.
Sure, but knowing that, like, linking them to Back to the Future, which is a bit of a strange thing.
It's interesting to know that, but I still want to see them. I mean,
Yeah.
regardless. But yeah. So, all right. I think that's it. I think we wrapped up on the future.
On the futures.
And we'll be back
What are we doing next week?
in our next episode. So obviously we'll have a regular episode coming out Monday, and then on Thursday, we obviously always do our series base. And since we wrapped up this one, we're going to do a wrap-up episode
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
next
okay.
Thursday.
Cool.
Probably go live and just talk a little bit more about Back to the Future, our
Goof around
plans.
for an hour.
Yeah, it's basically free form as far as we're going to talk about our plans coming up for the podcast, answering anybody's questions if anybody has any about Back to the Future, and just go and goof for about an hour.
Goof.
And then we will drop next week what our next series is going to be. What's our next series? Don't say it. Don't say it.
I feel like we've already said it because it was one that we were going to do previously, and then we ended up changing like 14 times.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
But which of those 14 is it going to be? But thank you guys for watching and listening to this episode. If you don't know, I'm saying it again. Maybe this will be the last episode I say it on, because at this point, you should know. We're on YouTube. If you're listening to this,
In fact, this whole episode has been YouTubeized.
yes, if you're listening to this just on an audio podcast platform, this is on YouTube in our studio setup space here. You can watch and listen to That's Movies, Brother. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate a rating. It definitely helps us out. And that's pretty much it. Go follow us on Instagram at That's Movies, Brother. Follow me at Tyler C. Gillette on Instagram and Tyler Gillette on YouTube.
Wow, you've been putting out some great stuff, buddy.
I'm trying to put out more content. And we will talk about movies with you guys next week. Bye. Let's go back to the future, baby.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.